Being a step-parent. I am one.
One day I wanna find someone who sees the world like me.
What's going on, people? Welcome back to Ben and Brittany podcast from benandbrittany.net. And today we are talking about being a step-parent, and I am one. And there's a lot of struggles and triumphs that are very rewarding, and we just want to talk about it because it's a real thing. Like, what's that statistic you found earlier?
Something that about three out of every 4 people who go through a divorce eventually get married again, which means that 1 out of every 3 Americans is either a step-parent, step-child, or has some sort of other form of blended family in some way.
1 in 3 people on the earth
are part of... No. This is Americans.
Oh, 1 in 3 people? 1 in 3 Americans
are a part of a blended family. So there's a step-parent, step-child, step-something or other in the family. So very common in America.
Yep, 40% of married couples with children in the U.S. or in the United States are formed with blended families
right now.
I can't even talk right now. It's weird. I'm nervous a little bit for this podcast because I think that's why I can't talk. But because it's a new thing. Like, we've been married for
we've been living together.
Couple of months. We've been living together for over a year.
Almost 2 years.
And it was a long process, a long road, full of ups and downs with meeting Brittany's children. For those of you who don't know, I am not their biological father. I met them and kind of slowly started to win them over. One was easier than the other, and that's because of the age difference. Like, the older one, Kaylin, was a lot harder to win over than Kinsley was. And I think I finally won Kaylin over.
I think so, but I think we need to back up.
Okay.
I do. Let's start from the beginning. First, I would like to just say that the girl's biological father is very much in their lives. We share 50-50 custody. He is a wonderful father, and he is very much involved with the kids. I always like to clarify that because the girls have a bonus dad. Ben does not replace and nor do we try to promote that. We just let the girls know that Ben is their stepdad, and
I am their Ben.
Yep, he is their Ben. Yep. We don't even really use the term stepdad. We just say that you have another adult in your life that loves you. That's kind of how we explain it. So one thing that I've always appreciated was Ben's interest in the kids early on in our relationship. So even before I would really start talking about them, because I was kind of nervous about it and just kind of more reserved about my kids, Ben would always ask about their days and like how they were doing, and he would just kind of ask me about the kids, which would make me talk about them more. Which then eventually, when I started to realize that Ben and I had something going and that it was more than just a friendship, he would, a couple months in to our relationship, he would actually just start talking to the girls on the phone. So when I would pick the girls up from daycare, we would call Ben, and the girls would get super excited to call this Ben, and
who they've never seen before, never met
him in person.
They just knew it was mommy's friend on the phone,
and they liked to talk to him about their day.
So looking back on that, we kind of did that by accident, but like looking back on it, we kind of dubbed it the soft introduction,
right?
Which was like, okay, mom would go pick the kids up and she would be talking to me on the way home while they were in the back of the car. That went on for a few days, and then they started to wonder, like, who is on the phone? Mom, who's on the phone? Well, it's my friend Ben. And it started off with me saying, hey, tell the girls that Ben said hi, and stuff like that. And then that escalated, that kind of graduated to, well, let me just put me on speakerphone and let me talk to the girls. And then the girls sitting in the back of the car started to be able to hear my voice.
Right.
And it was usually in the car, wasn't it?
It was like 99% of the time in the car when I would pick them up from daycare after work.
So before they even could put a name with the face, I had developed over time, this didn't happen overnight, like a relationship with these 2 little girls that I've only ever seen in pictures and was terrified to meet. Because like I knew at that point that I was falling for mom because I was cool with the fact that she had children. And once you like hit that point in your relationship, it's like no turning back. Like the consequences are so much higher once you get kids involved. So that's what I mean about like the ups and downs that I mentioned earlier. Like there's a lot at stake when mom introduces you to the children. Because like even if you guys are in love, the kids could really mess that shit up. You know what I mean? Like if they don't like me, we're pretty much done.
Right.
Kind of, like, you know, like we could probably work through a little bit, but if it didn't go well the first time meeting them, I would have been like behind the 8 ball.
No.
Like we would have been, our relationship would have been behind
It would
the
have
8
been
ball.
definitely a turning point for sure, or at least a setback.
Yeah.
And I had always respected how much Ben cautioned about that. You know, he didn't push meeting them too soon, or...
No, I wanted to wait as long as I possibly could, and only because of the phone conversations was I confident enough to be like, let's meet the kids.
Yep. And the girls were always so excited. In fact, they started FaceTiming, and I remember you had to go away you went to visit your brother for Easter, and I think that was the first time you had a real FaceTime conversation, because you happened to be FaceTiming me. The girls, I had them for half a day on Easter, which is how our holidays are split. And you FaceTimed with them, and I remember you asking them to be good for mommy. And
you were like, oh.
Yeah, my heart melted.
Mad brownie points.
Just because it was just kind of nice having that reinforcement. Because the girls had like this respect for Ben, because they had been talking to him on the phone for so long.
Yeah, and they were young, and... Like, Kinsley was too young to really speak at all at that point. Kaylin was the one that I was communicating with. And I just remember taking, like, every conversation with the girls was like walking across a rope bridge where you're like, oh, this could go well, and this could not. Like, I only have a little bit of time to win these girls over, because I really wanted to, because I love mom. And so I just tried my best to treat the girls like gold and make them like me, which is, nobody knows what to do. Like there is no advice on how to make kids like you. You just have to talk to them and get to know them on their level, and listen when they talk, because if they start to talk, that's good. Yes. Because kids are shy. If they're talking to you, you got it.
And I think that was one thing that you did really well at, because you would take notes on, mental notes on what they were saying to you, and you would bring it up. Yeah. Again, in later conversations. I remember it got to a point then where the girls liked to say goodnight to Ben, so they wanted to talk to Ben when I picked them up from school or daycare, and then part of their bedtime routine was calling Ben.
Before I met them.
It was before you met them, and he worked at UPS at the time. So their bedtime was like at the same time, because he had to get up at like 2 a.m. So we would call them after dinner, quick bath, and then we would call Ben before he went to bed, and they kind of talked about how they were both going to bed at the same time. And it was just super cute. And then Mother's Day was finally the day that we decided
we were gonna meet in the flesh.
And it was a big day for the girls and myself, because we not only were the girls meeting Ben for the first time, we were meeting Ben's family for the first time.
All in the same day, yeah.
All in the same day.
So we get in the car.
Ben met my parents for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
We went to breakfast with my parents. My parents were still like, we aren't sure about this, because
this is fast. What are you doing, Brittany? And I'm like, I'm the guy.
And then we went from there. I went and picked up the girls by myself. Their father knew that the girls were meeting Ben that day, so it wasn't hidden, but I didn't want to like bombard them with this new person. So I went and picked them up myself, met Ben in the Target parking lot, because that was kind of the halfway point.
Yeah, that was our meeting point.
That was our meeting point, I should say, not halfway point, but meeting point. And then Ben drove us to Turkey Hill Experience.
Yeah, but I'll never forget the relief that I had when Kaylin smiled at me. Yeah. Like, both of them did. Like, I parked my car, I see them sitting there in the car, and I see their little heads bobbing around in the back, and I'm like, this is happening. Like, I'm meeting the kids. Like, this is a huge turning point in my life. Like, if I meet the kids and this goes well, like, I am locked in. And if it doesn't go well, like, I don't know how I'm ever going to be locked in. So it was kind of an awkward, not awkward, but it was nerve-wracking.
Oh.
So I'm walking over to the car, my knees are shaking. And Brittany knows that I like to drive, and she doesn't like to drive. So she was already in the passenger seat.
I was ready.
So I walk over, and I get in the driver's seat, and I get in, and I look, and I just turn around, and they're both strapped in their car seats, and I turn around, and I look at Kayla, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" And she just goes, and does this cute smile, like this bashful smile. And I look at Kinsley, and I was like, "How are you?" And she did the same thing, and I was like, "This is in the bag." Like, they didn't look at me like I was going to murder them, like, which I was afraid was going to happen.
Yeah, I think that slow introduction really helped them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
When they saw him in person for the first time.
Yeah. So
Ben is just naturally good with children as well.
Which I never knew.
Well, I knew because whenever you visited your brother for Easter, like, you interacted so well with your niece. So, like, that, I think, maybe helped build my confidence more than you realized. Because you were so nervous, and I was so like, oh, he has this. And it's just because I was watching his interactions with my girls over the phone, and he was so natural with them. And he handled the conversation so well, and he was always so patient. And you can kind of tell when people get irritated with kids easily, and Ben was always just so very patient with them. So
I was more fascinated with their little brains.
Yeah.
You know, like, they, like, the way that they think and communicate with you at such a young age. Like, I just thought it was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like they were getting on my nerves at all. I was just like, that's what you think about that? Wow.
And even before Ben met the girls, like, if I was struggling with something, like, I was struggling with them staying in their bed at night, and I would just, like, kind of vent to Ben about it. And it was funny because Ben doesn't have kids, but he was my person, and I didn't really have anybody else at the time. Like, it was Ben and Ben's friend Clark, which has become a really good friend of mine, and then my best friend Jen. Like, I really didn't have a lot because of what I was going through at the time. So I would be talking to Ben about, like, parenting issues, and Ben would listen, and he would give me his input, and it was always really good input. And I just felt like you've always had this natural, like, parenting instinct. So I don't know, like, I always sensed those things. So I was comfortable. I feel like I was a lot more comfortable with it than you were because of all the things that I was witnessing leading up to that point.
Yeah, cool. Like, I never thought that I was like, in particular good with kids, or, like, had a kind of natural parenting vibe, or whatever you want to call that. I was just approaching it from, like, a logical standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, anything that happened, I was like, well, why don't you do this? Like, they're little kids, like, all they want to do is play, so you got to do this. But at the same time, like, I knew that the way that I was raised was awesome. I loved my childhood, but I wasn't really taught to do things or forced to do things. And by that, I mean, like, learn how to do things on my own, like, get things for myself, like, make my own sandwich, things like that. Like, I don't think I got that enough as a kid. And that was what I was just like, well, I think, like, if I was to be a father figure to some children, like, I would want them to be self-sufficient, and I would want them to be able to learn how to do things on their own and kind of push them to do so. So, like, that's where my advice was coming from. Like, let them be kids, but also, like, teach them life skills at the same time you're playing with them.
Yeah. And
Like,
he's always so good at that. He is always so very good at explaining
and it's fun.
things to the girls.
That's part of the fascinating part of, like, the being a step parent. Like, they're not biologically yours, but, like, they're yours. If you're in it, they're yours. So you better treat them like they are. And
when you get married, like, you don't marry just the spouse. You marry the spouse's children. Yeah. And that's something that you have to take into consideration, and Ben has taken very seriously since the day he moved in.
Mm-hmm. And both the girls at this point, I think they both look up to me in certain aspects. I think that they respect me, and I think that they love me. Like,
they definitely love you.
Kaylin just recently this month started saying, like, I love you consistently before bed. Like, that wasn't a thing. Like, I would tell her, and she would just be like, good night. And then finally she just started saying it all the time, and I was like, cross that bridge. Like, that was a milestone. So now I feel like I'm fully in with her. With Kinsley, keep in mind, Kaylin is currently 6. Kinsley is 3. When I first met them, they were 4 and just barely 2.
No, you were there for Kinsley's second birthday party.
Second birthday party.
So
okay.
that, Kaylin has much more awareness of what's going on.
She was able to put 2 and 2 together, like, hey, like, you're living with my mom now, but you're not my dad, so, like, what's this all about?
And she also, recognized that I was the one that moved out into my parents' house.
Yeah.
So early on, for a little bit, Kaylin blamed me, it was, well, you left Daddy. So that she had a lot of conflicting emotion, and was just kind of confused at first, but we worked through it. I set her up with her guidance counselor at school, just really made sure that her school and her teacher was aware of kind of what was going on, and she always just had like extra nurturing and somebody to talk to about, what her feelings were. And Ben was also very good at kind of being cautious about that and aware that, maybe if she's not as on board as Kinsley was, because Kinsley was like all about Ben, like pretty immediately.
Yeah, she clung on pretty quickly.
Right.
She started developing my mannerisms after like 2 weeks.
Right. So, as she became an instant Small Town Titans fan.
Yeah.
But I think you being cautious of Kaylin's feelings, and just because, of course, I think Kaylin also felt like, well, if I love my dad, I'm not allowed to love you. And I think she kind of had to realize, no, I am allowed to love my dad, and Dad is my dad, and he will always be my dad. But I am allowed to love this guy, Ben, who loves my mom very much and loves me like a daughter.
Yeah, she had to understand that there was still more room. There was room in her heart for another person. Like, at first, I think she was just like, well, it's Mommy and Daddy, and, like, what is this? Like, I don't have room to love you. Like, I already love Mommy and Daddy. Like, you messed it up. Like, that's what was in her brain at first, because she was young and she didn't know. So it took a while for her to create that space in her heart, I think. And then after she did, it was slow to grow, but like I was in there. And now I feel like I'm in there.
Yeah, now like when
Fully.
Ben leaves for a tour, like I have 2 crying girls on my hands.
Yeah, and that breaks my heart.
And the waiting for Ben to come home, it gets harder and harder, not just for me, but for the girls, which then in turn makes it even harder for me, because it's like you hear them, getting upset because they miss Ben so much. So he's definitely won them over.
Yeah.
For sure.
What were some of the hardest things that we had to like deal with?
Well, let's just go back to day 1.
Okay.
Day 1, Turkey Hill experience, the girls were both kind of clinging on to me. And then, like, within 5 minutes of being, I'm not even kidding, like, within 5 minutes of being a Turkey Hill experience, they wanted nothing to do with me and only wanted Ben. I have photos of Ben carrying both girls throughout Turkey Hill experience and then out to the car.
Yeah.
And then we had several really fun family dates after that. Maybe not family, we weren't calling them family dates at the time, but the 4 of us would go play miniature golf, or we would go out for ice cream, or we would go to this festival, and we were always doing like really fun things together. And then when the girls and I moved into the apartment, Ben was not supposed to move into the apartment.
No, they made me.
They didn't make you. You were.
They made me.
Ben wanted to move in, and I wanted him to move in, but we were worried about the girls. So the first night, they asked if Ben could spend the night. So we had like this camp out on the living room floor.
Yeah, in our brand new like condo apartment.
Yeah.
No furniture, nothing.
Yep.
Just like a blanket and some pillows. Like the 4 of us crashed on the floor.
So the girls, they loved it. And then the next day, Ben went home because he didn't live here. And the girls cried that night because they wanted Ben. So then he was like, well, if you're ready, I'm ready. And I was like, I'm ready. So he moved in, and they were always fine with that.
Yeah, they never were really like, why are you still here?
Yeah,
like
they always welcomed it, and then we just always made them recognize that this was Ben and Mommy's house, so it's Ben and Mommy's rules. And they've never questioned it being Ben's place.
No, not really.
They've always respected your authority, and I think it's just because from the day that you moved in, we just made sure that they were aware, like, well, Ben is an equal to Mommy in our house.
Yeah, I don't think... The one thing that I'm proud that I didn't do was let him push me over. Like, that would have been really easy to do.
Yeah.
Because, they're not my kids. At that point, I was like, I don't know anything about parenting, so I can just, like, put my hands up and leave it to mom if I want to. And she's not going to be mad at me because, like, I'm such a rookie. But I didn't do that, and I really tried my best to assert myself in a way that wasn't, like, too authoritative. Like, I didn't let them push me over, but I wasn't strict. Like, I didn't yell at them or anything, but I was like, I just kind of was mom's firm backup.
Yeah.
Like, I would never be like, go clean your room. Like, mom would be like, go clean your room. And then, like, if they weren't really doing it, a minute later I'd walk in and I'd be like, girls, what did your mother say? And then they'd kind of be like, oh, okay. So I was just I was the deep voice in the house that just repeated what mom said for a little bit. But I think that was kind of like the soft introduction to, like, hey, Ben can make the rules.
Right.
And now I'm at the point, like, they listen to me just as much, if not more, than they do you.
Moms. I mean, you all feel me. That's just how it is.
Deep voices get more respect.
Oh my gosh. And moms, that's just who kids tend to be, like, the most vulnerable with and who they least listen to.
Yeah, like, I've noticed I can be with the girls, like, all day and they won't fuss. Like, they don't fuss with me at all. And then as soon as mom comes home, they'll whine about every little thing.
Yeah, they're like, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I have a headache, oh my god, I need my inhaler.
Yeah, and their level of patience plummets when mom comes home.
It's so
They need
funny.
everything right now. And that's such an interesting, like,
I think part of that too, though, was, like, because of me, because there was a point where they could do that. Like, all I had was them and all they had was me.
Yeah, you told me before that,
like, when
they were a handful, you would just throw in the towel in order to get them to shut up or get them to stay at bay for a second. Like, oh my god, if I get you a drink, can I go do this? Like, if you were trying to work or something. Yeah. And they would get the best out of you. Mm-hmm. They would team up on you.
Or, like, I just had nothing else to do. So, like, it was just me and them. So, like, when they wanted chocolate milk, I'd be like, okay. So I'd get up and get them chocolate milk. And then, like, my real estate career kind of took off, and they might have to actually wait a minute for me to finish, like, typing up an offer.
They don't like that.
And then they're like, what do you mean I have to wait? Like, you used to always just get up and get it. So it's just, parenting in life, it just doesn't come with a manual. You learn as you go.
Yeah, and sure.
There was definitely room for improvement for me back in the beginning. I never realized I was maybe creating something negative by responding to and I don't like to call them demands, but when they would ask for something, I would just get it because I had the ability to, and it wasn't, like, interrupting anything. Mm-hmm. So I didn't realize that could be, like, this need for instant gratification.
Yeah.
So, oops.
Yeah. And now, I'm like, if they come ask me for something and I know they can do it on their own, I will sit there and, like, walk them through the process with my voice before I help them. Like, if I help them with something, it's because they physically cannot do it. Like, can you get this lid off for me because I'm not strong enough? Like, I'll help them with that. But if they're like, Ben, I'm thirsty, I'm like, go to the fridge, open the door, the juices are in the bottom, you can reach it. Like, mm-hmm. And Kinsley's 3, and her brain doesn't really, like, she would rather say, can you tell me I'm thirsty, than go get her own drink. But if I tell her what to do, she's like, this was easy. Like,
yeah, and then she does it. Yeah. So he's just much better at that than I ever was.
Yeah.
But I think that's just, like, a mom's thing. Like, I love to care for people. Mm-hmm. So, like, I just do things. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, I can definitely help you with that. I'll do it. And I think, like, you mentioned earlier that you had a great childhood, but, like, you didn't always know how to do things for yourself.
I wish I would have been taught how to do everything.
I think, though, your mom was probably a lot like me and just never thought about it. Like, your mom's a very nurturing person. So your mom was probably like, oh, you want a sandwich? I'll absolutely make that sandwich for you. Like, no questions asked, like, not even thinking about it. And that's how I am or was with the girls, too. Like, yeah, I'm mom. That's what I do. And I'm sure other parents have that. And I'm sure other parents, it might be opposite. Like, it might be dad that always does it, and mom. It's interesting to see other couples, like which one takes that role a little bit more. It's always different and interesting.
Yeah, I'm like the teacher. I taught Kinsley how to cook eggs over easy the other day. She sits on the counter with me while I cook breakfast.
One main reason I think too for this podcast is just to prove to people that blended families work. I think the importance to making a blended family work and to making children of divorced families succeed later in life is to make sure that their needs are still met, that there's a positive relationship in the household. So they're seeing a positive relationship between Ben and I. So that's teaching them what relationships really do look like and what stability looks like in the future. Another thing is like we don't ever talk negatively about their father in front of them. Not saying that I would even have anything to say, but it's just we always try to make sure that the girls know who dad is, and that's their biological father, that this is our house, Ben and Mommy's, so we have our own rules here, but that when they go to daddy's, they need to respect daddy's rules there.
Which are different.
Which could be different.
Plenty different.
And it's just that's respected. I respect, his parenting role. I don't question him and his rules. He doesn't question mine. It's just this, when you're at dad's, like, that's how it goes. Sorry. I'm not going to, try to change that. And I just think as long as it's clear to the children what everybody's rules are and that you're doing it in a productive way. Yeah. It sets it apart, because in the beginning for Kaylin, it was a little rocky because she didn't understand what was going on. Like, mom was living at Nana and Papa's house and dad was living here, and she didn't have her family dog anymore. Like, all these things are being taken from her in her eyes. And now that she's seeing a lot of stability in her life, she has become her happy self again, and she's doing really well in school, and all this anxiety has been going away that she kind of had in the beginning. So
her life now is normal.
Right.
When it first started, it wasn't normal.
Right.
And she was just like, what the hell is going on? And now it's normal.
Yeah.
And one thing that, like, I feel like probably happens in some blended families at first is, like, Kaylin does this openly. Like, we don't ever have to ask her what's going on at the other house. But I feel like it'd be real easy to start prying into that kid for information. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like that's a really bad thing to do, because I do remember at first there was a couple times Kaylin came over and we were like, oh, what did you do over at Daddy's? And she was like, I don't want to tell you. And I was like, why? She was like, because I don't want you to be mad at me. Yeah. And I'm like,
And we were like, what does that mean?
Like, yeah.
And it was really just, it was us just trying to have like a conversation starter. Like, basically, like when we didn't have them for the 5-day stretch because of like the long weekends at their dad's and the long weekends at ours, we'd be like, oh, how was your weekend? What did you guys do? Like, just try to like talk to them, like
small talk,
stir up a conversation. So it wasn't like, what were you doing? It was just general curiosity. And I think she may have felt like, were we digging like or something?
We were trying to figure out like, what's life like over there?
So we kind of, now it's more like, did you have fun this weekend? What did you like about this weekend? Like, I try to just make it more about the positives, and she just knows that she can talk to us and that it's okay. Like, I don't go running to her dad and be like, well, Kaylin said this. And we've also made that clear to her that you can tell dad what you do at our house and that it's okay. That nobody's hiding anything. We're all we are all her family, and that she can share her lives with us. Yeah. So, I
think one of the things that I never had to deal with from either of them, neither of them ever were like, you're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. Like, I never got that.
I feel like that's going to come in the teenage years.
Probably.
You know what I mean? Like,
'cause then I'll be
it's just going to be,
I'll be like, you can't go to the party. You're not my dad.
Yeah, like, that's just going to be the thing, because they find something to stab at you with eventually, like when they're mad. Like, that's just a teenager thing to do, and I think they'll do that to you, and then they'll probably throw like something in my face too about leaving their dad. Like, it'll probably come
Eventually.
up. It'll come up, and it's just going to be, it is what it is. But I think as long as we're stable here and we always provide a stable environment that they can come home to, it will be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what like this article talks about too, as well, is just, you know, making sure that you're providing stability for the children, and that having a 2-parent household tends to protect them from, you know, poverty. So they're not living like right now. They're living in we're not poor, basically. We're a financially stable home.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even think it has to be financially stable. I just think that if you're a stable household, you provide nurturing, love, and they know that Ben's not going to leave the next day. I think maybe if I was like had a revolving door of men and was constantly like breaking up with guys and seeing new men and bringing them around the girls all the time, that's kind of what this article was saying. Like, those are the type of relationships that, you know, can hurt children when they're older.
I feel like that would be like, I could definitely see how that would change a kid's outlook on life.
And, you know, just their security with relationships. Yeah. But that's why we were so cautious in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But we both knew. We
think it is possible to have a blended family and not raise a couple of assholes. Like, we can still raise good people. You can raise good people. I feel like there's a stigma of like, oh, if your parents, you know, get divorced or whatever, like, those kids are probably more prone to being jerks. Or right. Like ending up bad. Least likely to succeed. There's some statistics about that. But, you know, are they following the kids who had step parents that weren't good to them? You know, or like, was mom or like biological mom or biological dad like not that great? Like, right. Like, what are these studies for? I think, you know, like this article here is just really saying, you know, the children who are part of blended families who have some solid foundation and stability in their life can do just as good as children with their biological parents. Mm-hmm. And they get twice the amount of gifts at Christmas. We do. Listen to your laugh. It's so true. They get twice everything. 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases. But the number one thing that we always tell them is, like, look at how many more people are in your life that love you. Mm-hmm. Because when they got Ben, they got Mama and Papa and Mimi and Ben's brother and his wife and child. Like, all these people love Kaylin and Kinsley and care about them, all because I added one person in my life, mm-hmm. which I then added them in my life too, and they love and care about me too. So, you know, it's just a bigger family. It is. It's a bigger family and more people that love and support them. Definitely. I would say to anybody out there that's like thinking, or if for instance, if you're a guy and a woman, yep. And you're hanging out with somebody who has kids, like, I would definitely 120,000,000% recommend the soft introduction. The phone thing, the mm-hmm. FaceTime, the casual, this is my friend, he or she's a nice person, blah, 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 and let it grow from there before you just walk up in their lives. Like, and for the stakes are so high. For the biological parents, you know, definitely take caution. You know, I was dating Ben for a while before I let the girls kind of just start even talking to him. But I also knew right away with Ben. Like, with Ben, it was true love. We were in love unmistakably before I started interacting with the girls. You know, so you just want to make sure it's a good person. And I saw all these things, like I mentioned earlier, these just natural instincts that I could see in you when I would talk about the kids, and mm-hmm. your genuineness when you would ask me about them. Like, you know, just listen to those instincts before you introduce someone to your child, because it is an impact. It does impact them. And you want to make sure it's not a revolving door for them, you know, that it is something real. If you're a single mom and you introduce somebody or your kids to Steve, and Steve's only there for like 3 weeks, they're going to be like, what the heck? Yeah. So, and like, even worse is if Steve's there for 8 months. And then you have to explain to your kids that Steve is no longer in the picture, and they're like, but I liked Steve.
Yeah.
They're like, what the heck, Mom?
And stuff happens. Like, you can't always predict, and I know as parents, we all do our best, and things do happen. So not shaming anybody that's happened to. I mean, there's things that happen outside of your control or your predictability, but that's just our 2 cents, our advice, if you can help it. If you can't...
If you can't, you can't. Don't feel bad about it, because we know you didn't try it, obviously. Our best advice is just to do your best to make sure. Make it, I would say, make it a late introduction before an early introduction.
Yeah.
You know, wait too long.
For sure.
Rather than introduce them too quick. Unless it happens by accident. Wouldn't that be weird if, like, you just ran into me at this grocery store with the kids?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna like, oh, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, too funny. But
yeah.
I think Ben is an excellent, we'll say, father figure.
Yeah.
And
I think so. I enjoy it.
He's totally the reason why I have baby fever, because I'm like, well, if he's this great now, like, wait till we have one together. That'll be phenomenal. But then he goes on tour, and then I'm like, well, now we can't have a baby.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Then we're going to have to do a podcast on how to deal with long-distance relationships, because that's, for a couple weeks at a time, I do hit the road with the Small Town Titans and playing a band, and that's a whole nother dynamic to our family that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
But, yep.
Let alone if we added a baby into that mix.
Baby fever. All right. Well, do you have anything to say to the people before we wrap this one up? Any last tidbits?
All I'm going to say is that blended families can work, and there's no reason why you should be afraid to enter into a blended family situation if you're knowing that you're going into it with the right people.
There's a fine line between being afraid and feeling nervous. They aren't the same thing. I was nervous as hell meeting the kids.
But you knew you wanted to.
But I knew I wanted to, and it had to be done. It's just like meeting the parents. Like, it's no different. Actually, it is different. It's way more dangerous. I'm bad at words. It's not dangerous. It's just there's a lot more at stake when you're meeting kids than there is meeting parents. Because kids don't get it. They don't understand what a relationship is at first. Keep in mind, our children are 6 and 3. They're not 13 and 10. So we're dealing with the younger dynamic here, but don't be afraid.
It worked for us.
Single moms are awesome. They know how to take care of you. I know this.
I always tell Ben's single friends, like, you just need to date a single mom.
Single moms are the bomb.
We carry the best snacks.
Yes.
All the time. We're always super prepared.
They know how to cook. Like, if you get sick, you're good.
Oh, we got you. We got you.
But anyway, thanks for watching the Ben and Brittany podcast, or listening, whatever it is you're doing. You guys can watch our videos on YouTube, Facebook. Where our podcast is available, everywhere podcasts are available. So hang out with us. We do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We release a podcast every week. So like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff that you got to do in 2020 to stay relevant or whatever. I feel like we have to tell you that. Yeah.
We're on TikTok.
But we don't know how that works, because we're 30 years old and 29 years old. So
I posted something today, and like Ben was like hovering over my shoulder, like helping me. I'm like, do I do that? How do I?
We don't know. We just want to help people and give you guys an insight onto things that we deal with in our lives that many of you probably deal with too. So if there's any way we can help anybody with anything, or if you want to join our mailing list and get some stuff from us, you can text 717-422-8318. Text Ben and Brittany to 717-422-8318, and you'll get a text right back from us. That is our phone number, and all we want to do is help anybody in any way we can, and we will see you guys on the next episode of this podcast.
Sounds good.
All right. See you later.